Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Upshift Creek, where we try to break down the latest chat in Formula One. We've just finished watching the Austrian Grand Prix, but first of all, why don't I welcome back my amazing co-hosts, Ryan Sandler, Nick Calderon. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Zoom, zoom, bitches. And I got a little surprise for y'all.
What?
You do?
Merchandise.
What? Oh,
Yes.
damn.
Yeah, look, boys. Look. Come on now. I'm going to stick my butt in the camera.
I got a great one of those.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that looks great.
Official Upshift Creek podcast merchandise is now available.
Yeah, we'll definitely put some links up about that. Oh, that looks great, Ryan. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to get one of those.
Yeah, I got to get one of those too.
I am wearing the premium. I sprung for the premium quality t-shirt.
You're a premium kind of guy.
It's lovely.
You're anything but intermediate. That's a tire joke for if you. I'm finally getting it. That is a tire joke.
Look at you making tire jokes. Yeah. It's been a busy weekend. Now, I think this is the second sprint weekend that Formula One has had, and I'm going to say I'm quite digging this kind of the sprint weekend. What are you guys thinking about it?
I mean, Nick's been going on about it all week. I know it's his most exciting format, and he's gone on record saying he wish every weekend could be like this.
Yeah.
For me, it was wildly confusing, and I woke up in a cold sweat trying to figure out what race I was supposed to watch because I still have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. And I have to ask myself the same question every week, Ryan. Like, what does this mean? What are the points? What's what? I'll make it brief. I still don't like sprint qualifying or sprint week, whatever it's called. I still don't like those weekends. I was entertained though for the sprint shootout race. I still would rather not do it. And there was so much action in this week's race that I almost don't even want to talk about the nonsense of the shootout. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I do know what you mean, but it did give us a lot of entertainment. So Ryan, maybe you watched qualifying, maybe you didn't, but on Friday is when they do the qualifying for the race on Sunday, which they did do. And there was, well, I think that let's just take this opportunity with Upshift Creek to thank this week's sponsors, Track Limits, because that was just absolutely freaking insane. But that's what brought a lot of the drama into sprint quali, and the race itself, because the penalties that were being handed out were nuts.
I watched the entire race listening to the Push It to the Limit song from Scarface just to really, really get the full effect so I could follow along.
So we'll start with qualifying. On Friday, Q1, it got off to a bit of a weird start because Bottas spun around, got himself a red flag. But one thing that we were noticing, a lot of throughout the weekend is the McLaren of Lando Norris.
The McLaren.
Yes. Notice how I didn't say plural.
I love that McLaren just wasn't quite sure enough in their upgrades that they would build two of everything. So they're just like, you know what? Let's just build one of each of these upgrade parts, give it to Lando, and you know what, Piastri, you're on your own. If Lando can prove they work, great. We'll give them to you next time.
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying is the next race, Silverstone next weekend, is that McLaren's going to have the upgrades, and that Mercedes is going to be getting some upgrades as well. But it was Q2 where things got really interesting because the track limits, they just started kicking off, and it started kicking off for the big boys. Verstappen, he got track limits. Perez got it again. Stroll got it. Ocon got it, and that's when Red Bull came over the radio and they're like, Sergio, if you don't mind, let's just try and get a banker in. And Perez is like, no problem, goes out, steams that lap. He's right up there just behind Verstappen. And oh, wait, no, track limits number 3. Perez screws it up and then he ends up 15th. That was, I think, the biggest drama of qualifying was that moment with Perez.
And I don't want to jump ahead too much. I mean, spoiler alert, imagine if you're listening to this, you've watched the race, but did Perez need that kind of fire under his ass to maybe really turn up the wick this week? Is that what he needed to, put on a charge? He's been a little bit flat the last couple of races. I don't know.
Yeah, this part, when qualifying went wrong on Friday, everybody's chat was starting, right? And you've got De Vries is having a rubbish time, and everyone's like going, oh, is De Vries going to go? Is Perez going to go to De Vries? Is Danny Rick going to come in? And 100%, let's just talk about that, is that Perez, everybody was crapping all over Perez And then as the weekend went on, I think he put on a pretty great damn display throughout the whole weekend.
Yeah. I think he really turned it around after having such a rough go with things for the past few races. It was refreshing to see him sort of back to form.
Mm-hmm. And it was also kind of refreshing to see the Ferraris. They were doing pretty well, like, because not only did Perez go out in 15th, this was kind of a strange one. Russell and the Mercedes were just kind of nowhere all weekend. He qualified 13th for no real reason. But it was also just, in the end, Leclerc was so close behind. I honestly, for a second, thought Leclerc was going to get pole. He was so twitchy on the last corner. I think he lost that. But it was only like 100th to Verstappen.
Okay, now think about what you just said there, Ollie. He was so twitchy, right? So Charles has to push that Ferrari almost past the limits to get it close to getting a pole position kind of number, where Max is just driving that Red Bull. So I think right there you can see the difference. Yeah, Ferrari has made tremendous upgrades and improvements, but they still have to just wring the neck of that car, whereas as Max is just able to drive the car.
Yeah, honestly, that's one thing I was noticing a lot is those Red Bulls just look completely solid. At all times. Yeah. If they're right behind another car, which actually happened for the first time in I don't even know how many races, but
it's been 84 years.
that Red Bull is just, it's a beautiful piece of machinery, and it is being used to perfection by Max Verstappen. So in the end, it ended up with Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz. But what's quite interesting was Norris fourth. I'm like, yes. And then also credit where credit's due. We've honestly been dogging on him a little bit. Lance Stroll out-qualified Alonso, 5th and 6th, which is like, okay, straight up did it. And also a big, gonna give a little one there as well to Albon, 10th. So he's like, he out-qualified a Mercedes, he out-qualified a Red Bull. I'm liking the Williams. It's all like the whole straight line speed is kind of fun.
All right, well, if you're handing out little awards already, Ollie, you're not gonna mention Haas? You're not going to give a little hat tip to Hulkenberg up there?
Oh, well, yes, but that's see, I understand your confusion. That's going to be in the sprint qualifying, which we're now about to talk about, because...
Wait a minute, I thought Hulkenberg didn't qualify? Well, I thought he qualified in the top 10.
He did. I don't think, I think he was up there. I don't think it was like just a crazily impressive one, though. But it's like, let's jump ahead then, because that's qualifying. Fine, that's done. And potentially Ryan watched the wrong qualifying for the wrong way.
So it's not my fault. The Formula One app is very confusing with I think I watched the Australian Grand Prix earlier, if I'm being completely honest, because the words are so close. But I think the mistake, because I completely glazed over. Yesterday I watched the shootout. I watched qualifying, then the shootout, thinking I'm like, wait, how do they set the I'm such an idiot. How do they set the starting grid for the sprint race? And you're like, no, there's a sprint shootout. I'm like, what the hell is that? Why can't they just call it squalifying? It's so stupid. It's so dumb.
I will say, though, from a business point of view, it's brilliant, because I as much of a fan as I am, I rarely watch all of the practice sessions, but they had me tuning in on Friday because I wanted to see qualifying for Sunday's race. And then they had me tuning in on Saturday because, well, it's a sprint shootout and I want to see what's going on.
You're gonna watch it.
Yeah. They got me,
Yeah. I'm not sure I could take more than like 4 or 5 sprints a year, because if this was every race weekend, I mean, I wouldn't see my family or friends for 23 weekends.
It's a big time commitment.
It's exhausting.
So we'll jump into the sprint shootout, which was quite interesting. Now, so with the sprint shootout, their rules that they've got with that is their tires. You're locked in for SQ1 medium, SQ2 medium, SQ3 soft. But because it was still qualified as wet, we'd had kind of like a rain that morning. They kind of gave themselves a bit of a free tire choice. But that in itself is why sprint qualifying became quite interesting, because the track was kind of ramping up. People were trying to find the dry line, and it added a whole bunch of like, ooh, to what's going to happen.
A lot more intrigue there with just a tiny bit of weather. Starting out, I think they all started out on intermediates, right? And
that's what I was thinking as well, like very quickly. And then they were all switching over to softs and stuff like that. It all got a little bit dramatic, but it got very dramatic in just SQ1 because we lost 2 big names. And like just straight up, Hamilton, track limits, so he lost his time. He ends up 19th. Did you hear him in his interview after? He was like, yeah, whatever. Sprints don't even matter.
But as a relative newcomer to the sport in general, like, are the sprint races, have they been doing that forever? Or is that like a relatively new kind of concept they've only done the past few
almost
years?
as new as you, mate.
Yeah. Last 3 years,
You're welcome.
I'm guessing, Ollie, right?
Yeah, I think it's 3. And I think, but it's only this year that they added like the sprint shootout, like
Right.
because it used to be that you do qualifying on Friday, which would be for the sprint race, and then the result of the sprint race would be qualifying for the race, which I thought was so they've added.
That sounds more
Are
interesting.
you trying to confuse the issue even more by bringing up past? Come on.
Yeah.
I don't think I could confuse it anymore. It is very freaking confusing. And Leclerc, he went out in 15th as well. And then we also lost Russell to hydraulic failure. So it's like, honestly, Mercedes were having a bit of a shocker this weekend. Leclerc made it through by the skin of his teeth in SQ2. Oh God, did you see the bit? I actually missed it the first time. But Hulkenberg in the pits running over his own front left tire. Do you see that? The pit guy. And so
he did a kickflip.
Yeah, dude, he almost flipped his car over. It was
insane.
wild. I'm amazed no one got hurt for that. But the big story is kind of what like Nick was saying, is that when it came down to SQ3, the final results, Verstappen, Perez, but then Norris in 3rd, Hulkenberg in 4th on mediums, right? And then Sainz and Leclerc. I was so happy. That's what I mean. Is like this little bit of random that was thrown in. You've got Norris and Hulkenberg up there. I'm like, that's awesome. Sign me up for some more of that.
Yeah. It's hard to get excited about it though, because like Hamilton says, it's just a few extra points for the people who are already getting a lot of points. And I think that's why I'm kind of like, meh. It's exciting racing because the time frame is collapsed and everybody's kind of got to just chuck it in there for what was it, 17 laps or whatever,
something like that.
Yeah, and go for it. So that's what makes it kind of fun. But on the other side of things, it's like, who's going to risk taking damage? The teams who don't have the budgets are not going to want to damage things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
This sort of thing doesn't feel like it's about the drivers or the teams. It's more about them trying to milk extra money or whatever.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get me to watch Tulsa King or whatever it is.
Everywhere.
It's all I can think about. I was gonna say, if there's one takeaway from this podcast or this watching Formula One is like, should I be watching Tulsa King? This podcast also brought to you by Tulsa King.
Yeah, that is it's funny and very accurate, Ryan, because I was like, good grief, those are some expensive billboards and very strategically placed.
Yes.
Paramount Plus is putting a lot of money into that one. But ye of little faith, and the sprint race in between the race and quali, it's rained, and so now we've got a wet race. You can't argue with a wet race in Formula One. It got very, very interesting right at the beginning because Perez got a great start and he got up the inside, and suddenly Max comes back at him. Perez puts him in the grass. Then Max locks it up in the T3 and pushes Perez out. And I'm like, oh! And they're both on the radio going, what's his problem? Oh, what's his problem? I'm like, this is great.
Yeah. And in the background, Daniel Ricciardo's just got a raging hard on the whole time. He's just rubbing. He's like, stop rubbing my hands.
It's funny because Max is just not used to a challenge from pretty much anybody, let alone his liege, right? How dare ye come up and try to battle for position? Are you out of your mind, Checo?
He's just not used to it. It's just the past 75 races he's been in the lead. So to see someone go in front of him, he doesn't know how to deal with it.
He did not like you. Certainly at the end of the race, there was definitely a telling off. Didn't it seem like Max was just giving know which side your bread is buttered, mate?
It wasn't like the end of Top Gun where he's like, you could be my wingman anytime. It was more of like, don't ever do that shit again.
But if there's ever a place you're going to try something like that, it is in a sprint shootout, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to try that in a race.
Well, there was a winner and a loser from that. It really cost Lando because he got trapped behind the two Red Bulls having their thing. Half the grid went past Lando, kind of ruined his race. But Hulkenberg is in second at this point. He takes Perez and he's in second. And I'm just like hooting, hollering, having a grand old time. And it just like, Hulk stayed there for half, if not 3/4 of the race. I was like, come on, Hulk. Come on, man. You can do this.
He can, but it seems the car can't. And I want to come back to this discussion about Haas as we get into the race discussion. But that car, that team has zero stamina, charging out of the gate with a raging hard on from the beginning and then just goes flaccid, 10 laps in. So, well, let's get back to that.
It was just
all of our euphemisms are penises.
I was to say, it was just nice of him to make an appearance.
Well, the thing is, it wasn't just him, because Hamilton coming through from the back, someone that was on screen a lot all weekend was K-Mag. K-Mag was mixing it up left, right, and center with everybody. I mean, like, he was having a grand old time, but there was that bit with Hamilton and K-Mag where it was like, Hamilton got him, K-Mag came right back and took him, Hamilton took him again, and they were like just right next to each other through a series of corners. Then I'm like, yeah, K-Mag, bring it on. So like, I thought Haas had an okay weekend. I kind of enjoyed watching them.
Yeah.
It wasn't until lap 12 that Perez finally got Hulkenberg. And then we've got like Norris and Leclerc dueling for ninth. I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying is like, I mean, I know, I get 100% what you guys are saying about the sprint stuff and the weekend. But I'm like, we got so much action over this weekend that I can't argue against it. I mean, the sprint race was great fun to watch.
Yeah, and I like it's a low time commitment too. I mean, the race is so much shorter, but the action is just jam packed in. You know, they kind of take the best bits of the last few seconds of each qualifying round and just kind of shoehorn it into this race that, to quote Nick, doesn't even matter.
And to quote Lewis Hamilton as well. Another highlight I liked as well was Leclerc and Ocon. They had a series of about 4 corners as well, because that's what I love about the Red Bull Ring. It is a racy circuit. And you've got that whole sort of turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7. And, you know, people are up the inside and the other guy's up the inside. And honestly, I don't know how Leclerc and Ocon didn't touch, because it was one of those amazing moments where you fit 3 tires all into the same space. It's like one wheel right next to a side pod, and you're just astounded that there wasn't more accidents, to be honest.
There was some pretty good 3 wide moments going in there, and you know, you do hold your breath. And I agree. It was a pretty clean weekend, all in all.
Yeah. I said the one thing that was kind of weird for me is that because the track started drying out, and then it was Russell and Hulkenberg both pit, and they switched. They ran the numbers, and they switched onto slicks. And it was only for them that it kind of worked, but did it work? Because then half the field pitted with 3 laps to go, and you're like, you've got no time. What do you think's going to happen here? So honestly, I think everyone should have just stayed on Inters, and I think it would have been a better race, because like Hulkenberg ended up 6th, Russell 8th. I mean, it didn't work in many ways, and a lot of people just ended up way down the thing. I think I would have just sort of stuck it out.
Yeah, there was some interesting decisions made, and I thought the same thing. I'm like, in such a short track, such a short race, why not just stick with track position? But remind me, who went to slicks first? Was that Russell?
I think Russell was at lap 17. Yeah, he was the first one.
But you know, it's hard to argue with the numbers. He was how many seconds faster overall?
Yeah.
You know, it was clear that the slicks were the way to go.
Yeah,
so
he was in.
That's where I'm glad I'm not a strategist, because working out those numbers.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, he was 20th when he pit, and then he bumped up like 10 places on those tires.
He ended up 8th. So yeah, it worked for him, but I think for a lot of other people, it was like if you either did it or you didn't.
Right, that amount of time.
Talking track position brings me to my favorite part of the sprint race was the radio call from Lance Stroll saying, "Oh, you know, I don't think tell Fernando, I don't think we should fight. I think I don't think we should fight. I think we should just stay as we are." And it's like subtle, subtle. But then I also want to take my my best acting Oscar and hand it over to Fernando Alonso for the last 3 laps, where he acted like he couldn't get past Stroll, but it was like he's very obviously like just going, I'll lift. Oh, I'll lift off.
Yeah.
I was watching the last
He's-
two laps just dying.
He's got his phone out checking his bank account to see those zeros fucking pile up. He's like, all right, we're good.
Well, he did this similar thing in the last race in the pits, where the unsafe release when Hamilton was sent out in front of him, and he was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
You know, Hamilton's half a lap ahead of him. Whoa!
The takeaway here is that he is just an absolute joy to watch and has never done any wrong in his life.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, that for me was kind of ridiculous. That you could tell Alonso could 100% have gotten past him and just let Lance have it. He's like, all right, take your point. It's the same result for the team. And I think you're right. The guy he's an ultimate team player.
That's
I
it.
think he's getting what he wants to get out of this whole thing. So yeah, okay, that's the sprint. There you go. The sprint is done. Max Verstappen, can we just talk about the fact that, oh yeah, all this drama goes on. And in the space of 24 laps, Max Verstappen is 20 seconds clear of Perez. The guy is, I mean, I'm just done it. I mean, like, we're all going. I mean, even David Coulthard today, after the race, was like, Max, so, you know, is this your third world championship? And Max is like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. But I mean, we're all feeling it, but it is actually, I'm not going to argue, a joy to watch him. He's just insane. He's
good. He's going
zone.
places. He's going places. Just keep an eye on him. He's going to be great.
He's got a future.
We can shower him with praise after the race, but yes, Max is stunning. But that team together, that team, the whole group of those individuals working as a machine, as good as the car is.
Yeah.
Every pit stop is lockstep. The strategy is right on. The direction from the top is great. I mean, it's all just working so well.
I mean, you're talking about it.
Go ahead.
You're talking about it. Let's talk about it. Let's just, because we'll talk about the race, you know, as we get to it. But also, it's just, I think I've never seen a dunk like what Red Bull did today.
Oh my gosh!
You know, it was just. I mean, it's there, and the level of calm that comes over. So, of course, I'm talking about the bit right at the end of the race. There's 2 laps to go. He's only 24 seconds. I say only, but only 24 seconds ahead of Leclerc. So he knows he's going to lose 20 seconds in the pits. He doesn't have fastest lap, and he comes over the radio going, no, let's pit. And the team's like, well, it's not much risk. He goes, no, let's pit. And they just, and the fact that they do that, calm as hell, put him in, and you know, Leclerc can actually see Verstappen, but he just casually gets maximum sweep, maximum points from the weekend. He's pole, he wins, and he gets fastest lap.
All the points.
You just, Red Bull are on freaking fire.
Like, look at me. I'm the captain now.
Well, consider what that does and the message that sends to all involved, to everybody watching. Yeah, sure, he gets an extra point that he doesn't really need because he's so far ahead. But the message that sends to the team is, yeah, absolutely, we can do this. We have the confidence to do it. Max, everybody trusts in the mechanics and the pit crew to pull that off. It's just such a massive confidence boost to everybody, and it sends a ripple effect through the rest of the paddock, thinking, God damn, they're fast, they're good, and they can pretty much get away with anything. They are at this point looking to be unbeatable.
The Unstoppables.
Yeah. Plus, it's the only way he can guarantee going home and getting a hug from his dad, getting all the points.
Daddy, I got an extra point. It's not even his accent. Anyway, get me into this race, Ollie. I made some notes this week.
You did notes? Good for you, man. All right. The race started. Nothing much happened until lap 16. That's when things got interesting. And this is something that, honestly, Nick, you pointed out, and I hadn't really noticed, is how few engine retirements we have had throughout the whole season. The reliability of these cars has jumped insanely. That when Hulkenberg went out, I was like, oh, wow, look. Someone actually lost power. That doesn't happen. That brought out the virtual safety car, and that's where things kind of got interesting, because the VSC kind of happened. It was too late for Verstappen. He'd already gone by. The Ferrari's already gone by. Perez is still. He's doing a great job. You know, he's just blasting away from 15th.
That Perez and Russell fight was pretty fun.
Oh, man,
there was some good stuff, but it's like Sainz. He goes from like 3rd to 6th. He pits. the Ferraris pit, everybody kind of comes in, but that's where sort of things started to get interesting because it set up the future, because under VSC they're getting like a free pit stop in a way, or a freer pit stop that's actually going to save them a bunch of time. But then speaking of time, this is also where silly season started, or the silly race, because Hamilton has already got himself a 5-second penalty. He came over the radio, he was sounding like he was having brake issues. Then Yuki Tsunoda, he gets a 5-second penalty. And at this point, at one point they even had to put up like a display on the screen going, all the people that haven't yet served their 5-second penalty. So you're like, everybody on that list was like, I don't actually know what anyone's position is apart from Verstappen, to be honest.
And it was unclear for me. Like I was trying to, well, one, it was hard to keep up with who was or wasn't getting penalties, and whether or not they'd served the time in the pits.
Yeah,
which was
because your running order,
now,
the graphic of the running order, you just knew, like you're looking at it and you're like, okay, that's not accurate because things need to be levied yet. But you know, backing up a little bit, Ollie, like when I was to get back to Haas, you know, by lap 8, their pace is already fading.
Yeah.
Now, is it just a matter of just severe tire degradation or heat buildup? I would love to know, because they have some pace. They've made leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. The drivers are very good drivers. So why? I mean, these two cars finished dead last. You know, Hulkenberg didn't finish at all, and Magnussen finished 19th. After showing some really good promise.
Yeah, it's they were talking about, they got that, what's her name, Bernie, right? Is it Bernie Collins?
Yeah,
the F1 team. Like, she's great. I really like her observations and stuff like that. And they were talking, it seems to be that the Haas that, they overheat their tires. It's something to do with their downforce configuration, but they cook their tires. That's why they're so good on quali.
Until they're not.
And then as soon as you get to race distance, it just doesn't work. And it's so unfortunate. I'm with you, Nick. I think they've got a great team, great drivers, and I'm always rooting for them. But to just, it's just painful. The longer the race goes on, the further back they go. You know, they still mix it up though. I mean, we were having some great stuff from K-Mag, Albon, Ocon. Like those guys in the middle were just mixing it up, man. Because like the DRS everybody's going for everybody. I mean, there was so many overtakes. There was so many challenges. There was so many people going around the outside and the inside that I'm like, there's so much going on that like, I'm loving this. I love it.
It's like you've said before, it's every, I don't know if it's just this season or this is just kind of how it's always been, but it always seems like there's 3 different races going on at once. You know, you've got the guys at the front of the pack, you've got the midfield, which is super entertaining. Everyone's jostling for position. And then you've got, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri and Williams kind of just petering along in the back, I guess.
Well, no, because it was like we were watching Albon was dueling away for that point. You know, Albon was in the middle. Now Sargent was having himself his own sort of shocker, but there was so much going on in the middle, which I was really enjoying. And then of course, like there was all of these sort of pit stops that were setting themselves up, because we realized that we're like, okay, but the Red Bulls are going to have to pit, and I'm like, is Verstappen not going to be in first place? Is this going to happen? And like, honestly, in the back of my mind, I go, probably not. He's probably going to figure out some way to make up 15 seconds in the next few laps.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
But by God, we got to
was
see
interesting
him
for them
actually have to
pit.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see them not pit there. And there again, going back to just extraordinarily dominant the whole team is, you could arguably call that a mistake to not pit under the VSC. I'm not sure if it was track position. Maybe they were just out of position, when pit lane entries came up, but it doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't matter to them whether they pit under a safety car or not. They've got that luxury of incredible speed.
Well, I think the way it worked was, the thing about VSC is it can end like that. You don't have to wait for that safety car to come in. And so when the VSC came out, Verstappen and the 2 Ferraris had already passed. And so everybody else pit. The 2 Ferraris came back around and they pit. But you notice just as Sainz was leaving the pit lane, VSC ended. So you understand like the risk to that. That if Verstappen had decided to come in on the next lap and pit, and if the VSC had ended then he's down a 10th or something like that. So I understand.
I have a question about the VSC here. So when the cars are finally released, the safety, whether it's a safety car or not, goes off the track, and Max, who's in the lead, gets to dictate when they like properly go.
Yeah.
What's the ruling on that? Can he just like, how long does he? Is it a few turns? Like what? How long does he have to decide like when to start the race again?
Whenever the
That's
hell he
such a
wants.
weird-
If he's
So he
behind,
can just
if he's behind
So
the
he can-
safety car, you can back them up as you don't even have to accelerate because no one
Right.
can overtake until you get to the
Right.
start finish line. So
Right.
if he really wanted to, he could have gone 1 mile an hour until he crossed the start finish line, but you just don't. You don't want to do that.
Right. Okay. That's what I was asking. He can't just like finish the race like slowly. I just didn't know when he gets to like, he can't do like a full lap. I just didn't know. I'm like, so he can just take as long as he wants and release like,
So the
Interesting.
only thing to think about with a safety car is you've got to wait until the safety car is off the track.
off the road.
You know what I mean? So then then he'll just go full beans, and he did a
Yeah.
great. His restart was awesome.
Yeah.
But
They usually are. Yeah.
But the virtual
but-
safety car, somebody just flicks the switch off, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, crap, here we go.
Okay. Okay.
and you just go. So you've got kind of like an indicator on your steering wheel, and you up until that point, you've got to kind of maintain whatever it is, 70%
Yeah.
speed, and maintain your distances. But Verstappen finally pits, lap 25, which meant that for 249 consecutive laps since Miami,
Yeah.
Max Verstappen has been leading Grand Prix. That is an astounding statistic. Like,
I had to check again to make sure I was watching the correct race.
Is that
It's like this-
the record, Ollie, or did?
they didn't seem to say the record,
They
but that
did.
is,
Yeah,
at the same
I gotta
time-
believe that Hamilton has got to either have that record or be awfully close to it, right?
yeah. I mean, the thing that they were saying towards at the end of the race, I think, was that was a statistic that really got me. Is that, I mean, Max has been around in F1 for like nearly 10 years or something like that, and that over half of his wins in Formula One have happened in the last 18 months.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
That just
Yeah,
shows you
like-
how dominant he has been the last sort of like year and a
again, keep an eye on this guy. He's going places.
half. Yeah, in
He's gonna be
first
good.
place mostly. But at this
But Ollie,
point,
that pit stop sets up a nice Verstappen-Sainz battle as he came out of the pits. That was pretty fun to watch.
so Leclerc goes through, Sainz is just through, and you're just like going, all right, this is finally it's
Yeah.
happened. We've been watching for all of these weeks, and Verstappen is now not in first place. Something's going to happen. Oh, it's so exciting.
And 4 corners later, we're back to normal.
Well, about 4 corners, he definitely got Sainz pretty quick, didn't he? Ocon got himself a penalty. So there we go. That was another penalty around then. Perez, he pits as well. Lap 26, drops him down to 11th. But at that point, Verstappen is already up to 2nd. And then lap 28, this is a really interesting one, is Norris, who was my favorite all weekend. He took Hamilton on track. Like he chewed up Hamilton, who again was over the radio having problems with his brakes, and then he was over the radio having problems with Norris. You know, he's going, "Hey, track limits." Then he was over the radio complaining about track limits, and then Toto comes on the radio and it's like, "Look, we know, Lewis, the car is shit. Just drive." It's just like.
That was great. I wish we could have had a camera angle of Toto saying that. Like, it just such a great
Here,
comment.
let me emulate it for you.
It's excellent. Excellent stuff.
It and then from that point on, it was just like Oprah, like you were saying, with
Yeah.
penalties. They were saying that the FIA is in Geneva or something, so they've got maybe there was like, you know, they were losing time in the transfer and stuff. But Sainz, he got a 5-second penalty.
Mhm.
Tsunoda incorrectly served his penalty, and it was just like bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, it was that was something.
So
Black and
Tsunoda
white flags
what,
for
had a
Albon
total
and
of
Gasly.
15 seconds.
Sorry, say that again, mate.
Tsunoda had a total of 15-second penalty. Is that what it was?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and the Haas still finished after behind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was getting penalties in 18th place. I'm like, oh man. But the one thing we didn't get was wild Yuki radio chatter, which
I
was
know. That's
upsetting to hear. I'm like,
two
this is
races
the only
in
thing
a
I look
row.
forward to this weekend, guys.
You got to sign up for Sky Q, Sky Glass. the only way
I
to
was
do it.
thinking everything he was saying was so expletive that they just couldn't air it at all.
So the Red Bull, that's what we were talking about earlier. The Red Bull following on behind the Ferrari, you know, coming through corners that anyone else following that close, you're hitting turbulent air. And the Red Bull was just like, nah, I'm good. Just right behind him. It was lap 35 that he's back in the lead. So how many laps did we get? We got 10. 10 laps of somebody else leading a Formula One race before. Okay, never mind. Okay, Max is back in charge.
But a nice little bump for Ferrari, right? The season didn't start great for them. They were looking kind of rugged towards the midfield for a couple of races, just rubbish from Ferrari. And now at least they got to see and feel what running in first place is like.
Albeit briefly, what are they going to take away from this race and kind of implement into upcoming races as a strategy?
Well, you had that whole, because Sainz was there holding on, and you had Norris as well, who was kind of using his DRS to kind of stay racy. And the big sort of story there is that Perez is coming from the back. He's dropped back down to 9th, and the real race that we're all watching is is Perez going to be able to catch the Ferraris? Yeah, because in between Albon's penalty and everybody else's penalty, De Vries's penalty, and everything else. Gasly got a penalty. Everything in my notes just says penalty. It was just
well, that Sainz Perez battle was delicious.
Oh my God,
I loved watching that. Then the BS radio chatter from Sainz, he's intimidating me,
dude.
What the F was that? What do you mean,
Carlos whines?
Yeah, intimidating you. Are you looking for a penalty? This is racing, chap. You're blasting your ass down the straights at close to 200 miles an hour, and Checo is intimidating. Please.
Yeah, he had to pit and serve his penalty Sainz as well, didn't he? Norris
now, do they as far as these penalties go, do they have to serve them in the pit, or can they just
you don't get a chance to? They'll assess the penalty at the end. Yeah, they'll tack on 5 extra seconds. Did you also notice the Ferrari team still asking their drivers questions about strategy?
Yeah, it's a weird team. I mean, they did, like I said, they did all right. Remember, we were quite happy with them at the last race, and they're saying like they're definitely improving. But it's like I think they're starting to work sort of more cohesively together. But yeah, that was the thing. I mean, everyone I think was talking about. It was just like, of course he's intimidating you. He's racing you, dude. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing. It was is it Anthony Davidson, the other commentator, and he pointed out how Max instantly knew what to do in turn 3. He's coming up. He deliberately pulls himself back, crosses the DRS line, so he gets DRS to go the whole way. And then it took Perez 3 or 4 laps to figure that out, because he kept trying to go for Sainz. Sainz would get DRS and would get it back. So we got, for us, 3 great laps of like dueling, switching.
The funny part about that, when Davidson said that, I was like, oh yeah, look at how great Max is. But I didn't quite understand the effect and what he was talking about. I'm like, I understood him slowing down before that detection zone, but I didn't quite get the overall impact on the race. And then when you see Perez doing the same thing in the struggle that it took him to finally pull that pass off, I was like, oh, now I see. Because Ryan, did you get what was going on there? Did it make sense to you once you saw Perez?
Not a clue.
So okay, so Max on his pass slowed down just enough so he could trigger the DRS coming out of the zone and take off, and not give DRS advantage to the car that he just passed. If you go back and you watch Checo, he doesn't do that. So as soon as he gets past Sainz can click open his DRS, and now it's a fight. Now you've got great racing. But
like Ollie said, it was more entertaining. Because I was on this edge of my seat the whole time. Like, that was super exciting for me to watch.
But it is also equally as entertaining when you consider how freaking wily Max is to notice that, to understand the implications of that tiny little adjustment. It's fascinating.
He's a pretty good driver.
Yeah, that's the champion. I mean, I remember the first time I ever saw him do that was in Saudi Arabia a couple of years ago, where he stormed all the way up to Lewis and then lifts, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, you've got him into the corner, but he's like, no, I'm taking DRS, and then I'm going to absolutely annihilate him into the next corner. I was like, oh man,
such an interesting strategy.
It's just
I'm still learning, guys. I'm still learning.
No, I didn't like I said, until I saw it back to back today. It didn't quite land on me like it did today. I was like,
he's such a tactical driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he's thinking
he's-
everything.
He's playing chess out there. Everyone else is playing Chinese checkers.
Connect 4.
There you go.
Next four.
Jenga, apparently.
I mean, like, yeah, we've covered Toto's message and stuff like that. I mean, to be honest, I was just was just great. I mean, I'm not going to bother with my notes anymore because just there was so much great racing going on. It was really, really, really fun to see. But at the same time, you know, you're seeing such a commanding performance. Perez, he was up to second, then he had to pit again for lap 51 because it kind of became, because of that VSC, some people were on 2 stoppers, some were on 3 stoppers. It was kind of interesting to see how that one would work out. So Perez kind of gets up to second again, then he goes back to 5th. So Perez is like constantly having to fight through, you know. So I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Perez, I think, did an absolute blinder today.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm going to use that actually to transition to some awards, if you don't mind. I don't want to move things along too quickly. You ready for that, Ollie?
No, for sure. I think we've covered all the major stuff. Like I said, it's it was a great race, but there's almost too much to get into. But yeah, I'd love to, because I was sitting there, interestingly enough, when it comes to the awards. So if you've never listened to the podcast before or watched it, we do the Upshift Creek Award, which is for our best. It can be a team, it can be a person, it could be, I don't know, music, to be honest. And then we have the Upshift.
Let me correct you a little bit there, Ollie. The Upshift Creek Award goes to the team that is in a bit of a bind.
That's right.
Upshift Award is the winner.
We got to rename these awards, man.
We're just throwing it out there. But yeah, I was who would you go with the Upshift Creek Award? Because
Upshift Creek, I've got 2. I'm giving Upshift Creek to Haas. It's really hard to swallow the fact that they have such good pace and promise. And I get, you know, they're running, qualifying setups and they're fast, and anybody could be fast when you dump the fuel and put sticky tires on. And I get it, but they have some fight in them. It just can't last. They have to figure out, they have to put the rest of the pieces of the puzzle together. They've developed pace. They've developed a reliable car, except for today. But it's there. It's there. They've struggled for so many years. They were back of the pack kind of team, but they're right there. So if they could just somehow figure out the rest bit of it and stay in that sort of mid pack, maybe even finish top 10, I feel like they could really pull it off. But today's performance was just terrible. I mean, with all these penalties, to still have Magnussen finish in 19th place.
They show, that's the thing, is they show so much potential, but maybe why don't we get Gene on the phone, call him up, see what we can do, get him on the pod.
I might also give an honorary Upshift Creek Award to Track Limits, because clearly something has to be done next year, even if they just push out that turn just a little bit. You know, if 1 or 2 guys is doing it, and you can see that they're doing it to try and gain an advantage, then you put the track limit in place and penalize. But when you've got half the field struggling to keep the car on the track, I feel like something needs to be done.
I had a question. Like, let's say a driver does have like a lockup, like a legitimate, they go off the track. Does that count towards one of their 4 track limit?
It does.
Things. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, and you hear the other drivers say it there. You go, yeah, but you're paid. Keep it inside the white lines. You're a driver.
Right.
It's like, it's not that hard.
Drive slower. Yeah. And then, so if, let's say you do get a track limit penalty, which is 4 free penalties.
3 and then the black and white flag, and then 4 is
right. And then is it each time after that, or is it another 4? And
I was wondering the same. Do you go back to 0 and have to do another 4 to get it? Like, I was like, or
there's only one way to find out.
To play the game.
Tune in next time for track penalties. You got to play the game. That's right.
Well, I was like, for me, I was circling like, we've noticed the last couple of races that the Aston Martins have had a bit of a drop off. Or haven't been keeping up with the upgrades as everybody else. But honestly, to stick with our penis euphemisms, I thought Mercedes was a right floppy cock. So honestly, my Upshift Creek, I'm going with Mercedes. I think they were kind of nowhere. They ended up, in the sort of 7th, 8th position. You had Hamilton complaining, you had Russell's, hydraulic failures and stuff like that. So I'm like, and I'm a Mercedes fan. So I was like, they were just bleh. Couldn't give a toss about them. What about you?
Yeah, I was just saying the same thing. I was going to go with Mercedes too. I think they had such a rough go with like just not being able to figure their cars out. Russell didn't slam into anybody, which is always a huge bummer for me. But yeah, Hamilton, it's so funny to hear. He's usually so calm and collected on the radio, but it was just him not connecting with that car and just being a real baby about it.
Yeah.
And then Toto just coming on and be like, stop being a baby about it. And he just couldn't, like, it's unfortunate. And then but another one goes out to Lando Norris being a fucking tattletale. Like, come on, man.
Actually, I want to talk about that really quickly. Is because Lewis was doing the same. Okay, fine. Well, I'm following Lando. He's going off the track, and I was watching the race, and just with my eyes, I watched Lando's car go off the track so many times, and I'm like, even I was surprised. I go, well, look, he's all four tires off, all four tires. Well, sticking with the Lando though, he's 100% my upshift award. Lando's performance all weekend. Lando had a strong showing. I was absolutely rooting for him. The McLaren, people laughed. Mika Hakkinen 3-4 weeks ago saying, oh, these upgrades that McLaren are bringing are going to take them up to the top, and people were like, pfft. And I'm like, oh shit. They actually did.
It's working. It's working.
Well, for Lando, and then you got Piastri in 18th. So I'm like, at the same kind of Nick was saying is like, the thing is, they haven't put all the upgrades on Piastri's car, right?
No, they haven't, and I can only imagine that they do that just to make sure that what they've done is going to work, instead of spending the money on two sets of things that may not work. Yeah. And I agree, Lando is not my Upshift Creek Award winner, but he was definitely in the running for me. It was great. The kid is a good driver. He just is. He's a good driver, and you give him some equipment that works, and it's very clear that he can make a car go fast. So as strong of a showing as he did, not my Upshift winner.
So who is?
I actually gave it to Perez.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I gave it to Perez because he is arguably under a bit more pressure to perform. He had a couple of 3 weeks running just really bad performance, some bad luck, getting knocked out early in qualifying. All of that I feel like has to weigh on a driver's psyche in a position like he's in, to be on a team where you're driving alongside a god, and you somehow have to equal it or expect it to equal Max's performance. And he was rubbish the last couple of weeks. And so to see him turn it around this week, put in the performance, head down, go fast, not make mistakes, I gave it to Perez.
What are you thinking, Ryan?
That was my go-to as well. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Just the amount of pressure he faces, even when he's performing really well, is at an all-time high. So to have that slump where you're underperforming and you the jokes around feeling like you're under the guillotine the whole time. But it was so refreshing to see him like turn it around and have like a solid weekend.
It's amazing that Max Verstappen can lead 300 laps and he can get maximum points and win everything, and we're like, well, we're giving other guys the award. It's like,
too easy to give it to Max.
You just exceeded. Yeah, you were just being Max about things. But okay, awards done, but we're not done yet, because it's my favorite part of the episode is when we enter the dank zone. Reddit is a wonderful place to get information about Formula One, but it's also an even better place to go to Formula Dank and get all the memes, the jokes, and everything else. I'm sure even right now, the memes that are being written about he's intimidating me are coming on. I'm sure there's going to be some Hamilton and Toto joy that we're going to be finding out in the next couple of days as well. But what have you been able to find since the race finished, Ryan?
Now, let me go ahead here and share my little screen. My least favorite way to do this.
Ryan has disconnected.
Later, nerds. And I can't put these in any particular order. And hopefully you can see them large enough on my phone here. Here's one for you, Nick, because you mentioned Haas being
right.
Underachieving.
The Simpsons schoolyard beatdown. Stop! He's already dead. Black and white flag over Hulkenberg. Yeah, it's sadly too accurate.
Such a great
the wrong one. Black and white. That's not the black and white flag you want to see.
Yeah, no, the checkered flag.
Yeah, right. Wait, those are different flags?
I know. You think they'd come up with a different flag? Oh, yes. Okay, so it's the classic meme of the guy looking around the tree, rubbing his hands together. And in this case, it's Netflix because you've got two radios, one from Verstappen going, he pushed me off, man, what the flip? And Perez, what's wrong with Max? Yes, drama. The Netflix producers must be thrilled because definitely, you know, Drive to Survive is going to amplify that to the point that you were convinced they were going to kill each other.
Yeah.
with the sound of a in the background. Okay, that's a good one. It's the classic Spider-Man meme with like 7 Spider-Men all pointing at each other, and it's drivers pointing track limits. It's just, he did it too. He did it. Lewis did it. Hamilton did it.
Can you find Lando in there?
He's in the back of the van.
Oh, the newest episode of Cooling Down with Max Verstappen just dropped. So it's just clips from the cool down room. It's I actually I didn't hear any significant chat about it. You know, I was more about after the sprint race. It was Max. I would love to have heard what Max and Checo were saying to each other after the sprint race.
Yeah, it's more probably like if you ever pull that shit again.
I like the cool down room. It's fascinating. But you know what? If they're gonna do it, can we get a better microphone in there?
Yeah,
you know,
100%. Some guy with a boom mic.
There's probably a reason there isn't.
And then we've got like, it looks like NASA celebrating a massive landing of some sort on Mars. Everyone's cheering because it's Formula Dank when someone other than Max Verstappen finally leads a lap. It only lasted 10 laps, guys, but it was wonderful while it lasted.
Yeah, I think I got one more. Oh, here you go. I love this.
Okay, yes. So you've got the sort of Chad Lonzo meme with Alonso saying, tell Lance my brake balance suggestion, I think it will help. And then you switch to this race, Stroll going, tell Fernando let's not too much time with fighting. It just says, shut up, baby dick.
If you haven't seen that Always Sunny episode, it's fantastic.
Oh man, it's just penises have been the theme of this episode. It's fantastic.
Last one, here you go.
And Lewis, and penalties. Yeah, Lewis, the car is bad. We know. Please drive it. That's gonna stick. That one's gonna stick around. That one hurt. Like it's just, yeah. You feel like Hamilton just did not. I mean, to literally hear him say, "Oh, the sprint race doesn't matter," you know. And then you've got the other side. You've got Max Verstappen going for every single potential point because every point matters. Mm-hmm. I think Lewis was just off his game all weekend.
Does he have like just one foot in retirement mode? Do you think, like after the season? Or
the thing is, I don't think so. But they say that next week we're at home for a lot of the teams because it's Silverstone in the UK. We're also hearing that McLaren, Mercedes, they're all getting their upgrades coming in. So Lewis loves Silverstone. Silverstone is one of the real just great tracks. And so, you know, I think he's just, if he gets that speed back, I think he's going to get the joy. But it's a little out of character for him.
Do we also have like an 11th team, a new team coming in?
Yes, we do. Want to talk about that? We're going to have Brad Pitt out there.
I thought you were going to say we're going to have Brad Pitt on the podcast. I got really excited.
We are. He's booked.
See what he can do.
Now,
that'll be an interesting thing. I want to see.
You keep mentioning upgrades. What does that actually entail? It's such a vague, like, extra bolts and bits and
it could be literally, because I mean, this is Formula One, so I mean, you saw that amazing video. I think we were talking about it. I think it was a Red Bull video or whatever, but it showed how all the level of design that went into one screw, and then that screw being manufactured and being taken out and put into the car. And so upgrades can mean anything. It's like we've figured out a way to save some weight. We've redesigned this front wing with this duct or whatever. So that's the reason it's kind of vague, is because it could be literally anything on the car.
We've taken our driver out and shot him in the back of the head. I get it.
Well, Ryan, keep in mind, like in the off season, what's going on in the factories, these, the drivers and the teams can't see. So, race one, Red Bull shows up with a super racy car and something's unique about the undercarriage, or something looks different with the rear wing. If these teams can somehow either replicate or duplicate or go in a direction that the fastest car has gone, you know, it takes time to develop some of those parts, and they bring those parts in. That's what's kind of fun about as the season progresses. You know, if you go back and listen to our first podcast, we're probably making predictions of who's going to win and who's really slow. But
boy, were we wrong.
All of this changes.
Yeah, you're right. That's what makes the sport so like entertaining to watch. Is it really does shift week to week. You never really know what's going to. You have a general idea, but you never really know what's going to happen until it's race day.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you remember, like, was it Silverstone? Was it last year? Was that the one with Joe's crash? Was that last year or the year before? I lose track. But Silverstone, we had that incredible opening lap, scary moment.
Oh my God, yeah.
So we'll see what Silverstone has to offer with regards to how far ahead Max Verstappen is. But at the same time, I think we should just sign up and enjoy. But this is going to be kind of a legendary season. But yeah, we'll see what happens, guys. It was fun chatting with you as always. To anybody at home, thank you so much for joining in. We do see your messages and your comments. We do enjoy it. We will make sure we put links up so you can find your Upshift Creek merch if you want to get your t-shirt, which I'm going to be buying as soon as I get off this.
We've got shirts, beach towels, shower curtains. We've got it all.
Yeah, and dildos as well.
And don't forget I hate to, we got to be that person though, but if you're enjoying what we're doing, it helps to subscribe. It helps to turn on the notifications, all that stuff. You know, fledgling podcasts like ours take a lot of work, but it's helpful when people do those simple things and make those little clicks.
And Nick, Ryan, thanks once again. Great chat. I'll see you guys next week for Silverstone. And for everybody else, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Upshift Creek. See you next time.
Vroom, vroom.